What is up, everybody? Skratch coming up with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Plarium just released a new video, guys. The Hydra clan boss. So we're gonna find out some information in here. I haven't even watched it yet, so it's gonna be literally the first reaction. I guess we're gonna find out what's gonna be the rotation from tomorrow. What exactly is gonna happen, okay? So let's jump straight into it and see. The Hydra is finally here.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new update preview. Today we're tackling Hydra battles, and there's a whole lot to talk about, so I'm just going to get into it. We'll start with Hydra rotations and the general structure of the battles. First, you'll be taking 6 champions instead of 5, lots of extra power. Second, once a champion
Check that out there.
used
11 million damage, 1.7 million damage, double Krisk, Lydia, Torbins, and Coronar. I hope we're gonna get accurate information in this video, guys, and we're gonna discover how to beat the boss. Like you can see, look at those two teams. You see the first team looks like a clan boss team, more or less. And then look at the second one. Look at the damage difference in between those two teams. And one of them had 3 keys. That was a failure. Who actually used 2 Tormins against the Hydra? I wanna know that.
in a battle against the Hydra, you won't be able to use them again against this boss until the weekly reset. You get 3 battles a week, so get creative. Now, let's talk about the Hydra. It has heads. You'll be fighting 4 at once, and each head will be unique. No duplicates.
No duplicates of heads, guys. One thing that I want to point out, this video was kind of a surprise for me. I was actually working on a different video. Keep an eye for later on. We're gonna have the speeds, the accuracy, everything that's happening with this crazy clan boss, guys. And trust me when I'm telling you, it's gonna be crazy. Exactly how I've told you that it's going to be. None of these heads, they're gonna have the same stats.
But while there are only 4 heads in the fight at a time, there are 6 heads total, and the other 2 heads are waiting in the sidelines. Every month will be a new Hydra rotation. It'll switch out each head's affinity and change the 4 starter heads. And when we have more than 6 heads to choose from, it'll also mean leaving some heads out of the rotation entirely. Okay, fighting the Hydra. When a Hydra's head HP hits 0, they're decapitated. This causes a decapitation effect, a special bonus that's unique based on which type of head you killed. Once a head's been decapitated, it leaves behind an exposed neck, which can still take damage. Lots of damage, actually, so hit it with everything you've got. Before, you guessed it, the Hydra grows back a new head.
Wait,
Exposed
check
necks
this out.
are
Check
immune to
this
buffs
damage difference. Was huge, actually.
Before, you guessed it.
I know they
the
said
Hydra grows
200%
back a
more
new
damage,
head.
I think, no?
Exposed necks are immune to buffs and nearly immune to poison debuffs, but everything else works just fine. Which head grows back is determined randomly. On easier difficulties, it'll probably be the same head you killed. But remember, there'll always be another 2 heads, and there's a chance when an exposed neck grows a fresh head, it will be a different head than the one you originally killed.
The lower the difficulty, the chances for a new head to grow out a different one, they're lower, okay? So the higher the difficulty, the chances for a new head as a different one to come out after you decapitated one are much higher. So that's a good thing to know, that on easier difficulties it's not gonna completely obliterate the people, you know?
You'll need to improvise. Regardless of which head grows back, it will have a new Serpent's Will buff until the end of its first turn, reducing all damage it takes by 75%. All right, next up, let's talk about consumption. The Hydra eats people. Every so often, one of your champions will be marked with the mark of the Hydra. Later, one of the heads will straight up eat the marked champion. However, it'll take a few turns to digest them. Deal enough damage to the head while your champion is being digested, and it will vomit them back up.
So they vomit
Take
them
too
back
long.
up with no turn meter by the looks of it. One sec, I want to see. Actually, no, she has no turn meter. I'm curious
Eat the
if
marked champion.
whenever a champion gets marked and it gets eaten and he has 50% turn meter and the head is gonna spit it back out afterwards. Is it gonna be thrown back out with 50% turn meter or something else? Like speed tuning, the way we know it, guys, is not possible anymore. We can forget about it.
However, it'll take a few turns to digest them. Deal enough damage to the head while your champion is being digested, and it will vomit them back up. Take too long, though, and your unlucky champion will be consumed. That means they're dead, no revives, completely gone from battle. So if a champion gets eaten, hit the head responsible hard and fast if you want your guy back. All right, that's the Hydra in general. Let's talk about those 6 heads.
Okay, I'm curious how often. They haven't specified how often is gonna happen the cycle, so we know how it kind of comes in play. But by the looks of it, if this is the normal difficulty and that ninja just with the A2, with the HP burn, literally just cancel the whole thing, and we got our champion back, whatever you call it. Not cancel, but dealt enough damage to release the champion from its stomach. I feel like maybe we're not gonna have to deal like insane amount of damage on it, you know.
First up, the head of Decay. Its default attack, agonizing jaws, targets
I wish we would have had this video ages ago.
HP, and puts a heal reduction debuff on them. It will also remove all debuffs from its fellow heads with Speed of Decay. Its almighty Decay passive skill also messes with your
This is gonna be one of the nastiest heads, guys. This messing up with the healing, I think is gonna be a serious problem if we don't have big shields. So I feel like shields are gonna be the thing that they're gonna keep us alive against this head. Definitely we gotta work on shields with him. And the cleans that he's constantly bringing is gonna make us always to bring up new debuffs on the enemies over just extending them, you know.
Champion who gets healed will also have their max HP reduced by 15% of the heal, up to 75% of their max HP. Lastly, it can bring up a life barrier using its Rotten Ward skill. This cleanses the head with the least HP of all debuffs, then gives it a shield-like temporary HP barrier for several turns. This barrier can't be bypassed or removed. Damage the head to break the barrier, or the head will fully
So that's another
heal
problem,
itself.
because it's cleansing it, so block debuffs is not gonna work against it. If we're not gonna destroy that, the head is gonna get to heal. But I'm curious though, if we let that head to heal, the damage that we already dealt is not like it's gonna be minus back from our total, you know? So maybe we don't really have to care that much about that head that gets to heal back. We can still focus on the rest if that barrier, because that barrier reduces damage if I remember it correctly.
As a bonus, if you do break the barrier first, it will stun the head it was protecting. The Head of Decay's decapitation effect, the thing that happens when its HP hits 0, is a very handy heal. Your champions heal 30% of their HP, then recover half the max HP destroyed by almighty Decay. Lastly, the Head of Decay has a passive that reduces all incoming AoE damage by 10% for all Hydra heads. Every Hydra head has
I
this
can't wait,
passive,
guys.
so you
I
can
can't wait.
expect all your AoE damage to be reduced by 40% or more. We'll get to that. Secondly, the Head of Torment. This one is a bit more straightforward. Its default attack has a chance to place a Fear debuff on the first hit, then follows up with a second hit against all champions with a Fear of True Fear debuff. The second attack, Curse Storm, is an AoE that hurts way more if your champions are under a bunch of debuffs. Taking it down can be complicated. The Head of Torment automatically applies an unblockable, irresistible, True Fear debuff on champions that attack it. Unless they have a perfect Veil buff active, bring Cloakers, or a champion that can cleanse debuffs to deal with this. The Head of Torment's decapitation effect cleanses all Fear and True Fear debuffs from your team, and gives 2 random champions a perfect Veil buff for 2 turns. Next up, the Head of Blight. It has 2 AoE attacks. Its default, Dripping Jaws, attacks your entire team and places 3-5% poison debuffs, with a high chance of putting
This
a
is
leech
very
debuff
nasty
on
as
top
well,
of it.
guys, because it can explode all the poisons. That's why we really gotta have cleansers. We gotta have that block debuffs up all the time. So we gotta be careful with that as well.
That. Its other skill, Leeching Blight, also applies a 5% poison for a few turns, and if the champion has leech on them, immediately activates all poison effects. Toxic. That's not all. Its third skill, Blinding Smog, applies a new buff called Poison Cloud on its fellow heads, which makes all incoming hits count as weak hits and blocks all poison damage the heads would receive. Upside, this head is weak to fire. It takes double damage from HP burn debuffs, and if a head is under an HP burn debuff, it won't be protected by the Poison Cloud. Best of all, when you kill the Head of Blight, its decapitation effect deals huge damage to any other heads under HP burn. Pro tip, you can use the Affinity Breaker set to bypass the Poison Cloud 20% of the time. Now, let's look at
So
the main tank
HP
the
burn is
Hydra
a
can
must,
bring.
guys, whenever we're facing those heads. Not only for the Poison Cloud, it's pretty good damage as well to get tick every single time, so it's gonna lower the HP on everybody a lot. And because they're multiple ones, you know, it makes more sense to have it. I would assume it's gonna hurt every single one of them per every single tick. And definitely a must there, you know.
Bring to the field. The Head of Suffering. Its basic attack is simple. Crippling Jaws lashes out at all your champions and puts a weaken debuff on them, as long as they don't already have Strengthen. Its second skill, Thirst for Pain, puts an ally protection buff on all other heads, puts a reflect damage buff on itself, and provokes your champion with the highest crit damage. It basically tries to rob you of your main nuker. Finally, Share Sufferings is where the Head of Suffering gets its name. It places a new debuff, Pain Link, on one of your champions, which causes them to take 15% of all the damage that the Head of Suffering takes. Fortunately, this debuff can be cleansed or countered with block damage or high resistance. Its passive
Block damage. That's actually a good idea to block it like that. Because if you have block damage, your champion is not gonna take block damage. But I feel like immunity is gonna do the job as well, you know.
skill, Almighty Suffering, increases all heads resistance by 50. And, even worse, its AoE damage reduction boost is 30% instead of 10%. While this thing is alive, AoE damage is reduced by up to a crippling 60%, if you include the passives from the other 3 heads. Once you decapitate it, though, your entire team gets a shield equal to 30% of their max HP, which can seriously come in clutch if you time it right. Next up is the Thief of this Viper Pit, the Head of Mischief. Its default attack, Thieving Jaws, targets the champion with the most buffs, then steals all those buffs along with 50% of the champion's turn meter. Its second attack, Spoils of Mischief, spreads the pilfered buffs onto all other heads, setting their durations to 2 turns. Killing it can be quite the challenge. With its Almighty Mischief passive, the Head of Mischief has a 75% chance of redirecting any incoming attack to another Hydra head. The only way to prevent that is placing a Hex debuff on it, or try to rely on AoE attacks, which can't be redirected. Though the damage will be reduced, potentially by a whole lot, depending on the other heads you're fighting. Still, it's not hopeless. Your champions can resist the Head of Mischief stealing their buffs, and they can remove those buffs from the Hydra if they get spread around, or before they get spread in the first place. You can also put block
That's
buffs
gonna
on
be
the
the creme de la
Thief,
creme.
so
Block
even if it
buffs,
does go
guys,
for your
trust me.
buffs, it will just remove them instead of stealing them. The Head of Mischief's decapitation effect causes all other heads to lose 100% of their turn meter, which is awesome. Last of the heads is the Hydra's main damage dealer. You won't like the Head of Wrath when it's angry, and it's always angry. Its default attack is pretty standard, hitting all champions hard and putting a 50% decrease attack debuff on everyone. Either block, cleanse, or resist that debuff if you want to keep your damage up. Then the Head of Wrath does something unusual. It makes itself a target. Its second skill, Furious Roar, provokes your entire team for a turn and buffs itself with a 50% increase attack. Sadly, taking damage is how this head deals damage. Every time it gets hit, it builds up stacks of its Vengeance counter. When it has 15 stacks, it activates Almighty Wrath, which gives it a block debuffs and reflect damage buff. Then a new super strong buff called, you guessed it, Vengeance, which quadruples its attack power for a turn. Then it hits you with all that quadrupled strength, and it still has Vengeance for its next turn on top of that. It won't build up stacks on its counter while Vengeance is up, but the downside is that the head will probably kill you with it. You'll want champions who can deal massive damage with single hit skills so they can minimize the number of stacks they add to the Vengeance counter, as well as healers or buffers who can put your entire team under block damage. The Head of Wrath's decapitation effect deals heavy damage to the rest of the Hydra. That damage is significantly increased if you can kill the Head of Wrath while it's under the Vengeance buff. And that's it for today, folks. Whew. Remember, the Hydra's heads might be dangerous on their own, but it's the combos that really make it deadly. It should be a tough and fun challenge, but the rewards will be worth it. We look forward to seeing how you tackle this new clan boss. Until then,
But here we are, guys. Pretty much as I thought. I made a couple of videos on it, kind of like explaining you what sort of champions I think will be very powerful, what sort of teams I think we could start with to kind of give you an idea on what to work on. And so far, I think I was pretty on point with it. I'm gonna have to test them, guys. Stay tuned for today's video that is gonna drop in a few hours, because 3 videos today, why not? We're gonna talk about their stats, we're gonna talk about the drop rates, everything that's interesting about the new clan boss. Do let me know in the comments down below who is as excited as I am, and what do you think of what you've seen right here, guys. Much love to all of you, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.